Hey, good afternoon or good evening. So this is the third training for Asian American Youth Entrepreneurship and Innovation Contest. So we'll give a couple of more minutes for folks to come in before we start. And while we're waiting, if anyone have any question about the training or about the context, feel free to either just unmute yourself, ask, or put the questions in the chat. Okay, so it's 7:05 Eastern time, so I think we'll get started. All right, so once again, welcome to the Asian American Youth Entrepreneurship and Innovation Contest. This is the fourth year that this contest is held, and the organizers are International Leadership Foundation, who is the lead organizer, and Yuan Media, who is also co-leader of co-leading the contest. And then we also have two co-organizers, Growth for Business, who the co-founders for Growth Business will be providing the training today. And lastly, we have Chinese American Parent Association of Montgomery County, Maryland, and for which I am a member of. So, so for this contest, we've prepared a series of trainings, including 5 of them. And so today is the third one. And the next Wednesday, we're going to have another training from a investor who is going to teach us about from what angles that an investor would evaluate the business plan. And then the last training would be on the coming Saturday about how to attract venture capital investment. So roughly the timeline for the contest, in case you're interested in attending the contest, the August 27th is the deadline, so that you will need to submit the business plan. And then September 4th is the time for online presentation. So keep those two key dates in mind if you're interested in joining the contest. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to our presenters today, who are the founders and the current managers for Girls for Business. So Rachel, would you like to start?
Sure, amazing. Yeah, let me screen share really quick and then we can get started with today's training. Okay. Okay, so again, welcome everyone to Building Your Business, the third training of the ILF Leadership Foundation's conference. So today we're going to be talking a lot about how to ideate and launch your own business venture, business or nonprofit, and how to really scale and expand your initiatives to be able to have a greater reach and a stronger connection with your community.
So let's go over what we're going to be doing today. So first we'll introduce ourselves so you can kind of get to know our backgrounds, and then we'll go over a case study and talk about how Girls for Business was built and how you can apply our lessons to your own business. And then we'll have an inspiration session and finally a Q&A.
So yeah, we're going to start with some icebreakers. Since there are a lot of people here in this event, you guys can write in the chat your name and what state you're from, and also the business fields that you're interested in. If you guys are more comfortable with just talking out loud, that's also great too. You guys can just unmute. Awesome. So we have some people who are pretty interested in finance and marketing.
All right, so now we can transition into some of our own intros so you can get to know each of us a little bit more, starting with Rachel.
Hi everyone again. I'm Rachel. I'm the founder and executive director of Girls for Business. So a little about me, both my working experiences and my other hobbies and extracurriculars. So later on in the Q&A discussion, feel free to ask me questions about any of these or about our workshop content. So a little about me. Through my working experiences, I've worked in various sectors of business in different settings and work companies. So over the summer, I was a financial intern at the Johns Hopkins University Applied Physics Laboratory. So I did a lot of work with Excel and reporting data and projecting finance reports, as well as looking deeply into contract management and other financial projection methods. I've also been a research intern at Public Spend Forum, which is a late-stage startup, and I did a lot of research into set-aside businesses and the current a very hot topic, government infrastructure bill. I was also a business development and marketing intern at Magnify Consulting, which is an early stage startup. So I've been doing a lot of work with creating marketing campaigns and learning about SEO and analytics. And then I'm also the statewide officer for the Chapter Development Initiative of Maryland DECA. So a lot of organizational and community service work there. And then outside of my working experiences, I really enjoy tech, music, and tennis. Over the past summer, I also participated in the Code with Classy web development program. 100% recommend for any of you out there who are interested in coding. And then I was also play in our state symphony orchestra, MCYO. Some of you guys probably know of it or are in it. And then I'm a school news editor for our school's newspaper. And then I'm also on our school's tennis team. All right, passing it off to Ivy.
Okay, I'll go over my stuff really briefly. I'm Ivy. I'm one of the co-founders and co-director of operations, and it's so nice to be speaking at this event. So one of the things I've been doing this year was being a research intern at the Close Relationships Lab at Michigan State University. And kind of outside of business, I'm super interested in psychology and specifically social psychology as well as relationship psychology, and kind of looking at the implicit measures and how our personalities change over time. So we were working with that data, and we are currently publishing a paper that's going to be out soon. And then also, I guess now I can kind of tie in my hobbies. I'm super passionate about dancing, singing, poetry, and I love to blog. So at my school, we have a Bollywood fusion dance team, Troy Riaz, and I'm the production lead for that. And then with singing, recently I joined this online a cappella group, Vocal Factory, and we basically kind of like mesh our voices together and then have like a video collage. I think is really cool. And then this summer, kind of, I guess on the opposite hand from like all of Rachel's internships, I've actually been working summer jobs. So one of them is I'm currently a tutor for K-12 kids in math, reading, and writing, all the way ranging from like people learning their ABCs to people doing pre-calculus and calculus. So that gives me a wide variety of people to work with, and it's really fun. And I've also been a barista at this boba chain called Onezo, and I think it's been a pretty cool experience working there. So yeah, I'll now pass it over to Sophia.
Yeah, so hi, I'm Sophia. I'm also one of the co-founders and co-director of operations. I'll go over mine pretty briefly as well. I'm currently interning at Women's Entrepreneurs International and at Bueno Shinoda Consulting. And I'm also the fundraising director at the 2 a.m. Post. And they basically write articles about topics that aren't getting enough attention on the mainstream news platforms, so that's pretty cool. And I'm also the SJ president of So2 Summer Camp. I'm also flutist at Potomac Valley Youth Orchestra, PVYO, and I think some of you guys are also there as well. Some of my hobbies, of course, are flute, and over the summer, I've gotten pretty into reading, so that's pretty cool, and I also love to hang out with my friends. And yeah, I'll pass it on to Emily.
Hi guys, I'm Emily. Apologies if there might be some background noise later. There's people that are doing construction above me, but hi, I'm really excited to be here, and I am the co-director of public relations for Girls for Business. You can see some of my background experience on the slide, and some notable things include being the president of a nonprofit that helps kids with cancer. It's called the Super Joey Foundation, and I'm also a varsity national debater and our school's DECA vice president. And some of my hobbies include participating in puzzle hunt competitions, going to museums, and singing. Great, so now let's hand it over to Rachel to discuss like the mission of Girls for Business.
Perfect. Thanks, Emily. So now just going a little bit more into Girls for Business, our mission and what we do. So I see a lot of familiar names from our past events, so I'm sure a lot of you guys have already kind of known what GFB is about. So Girls for Business is a 501c3 nonprofit organization, entirely student-led, student-driven. So our core mission is to empower aspiring young businesswomen in the middle and high school grade levels to pursue explorations and future endeavors in business in high school, college, and beyond. So Girls for Business has three core objectives, which are mentorship, resource, and community. So with our mentorship asset, we have a lot of different mentorship activities going on, the core one being our business mentorship program. So through this program, student mentees are allowed to apply and be paired with a mentor who is an experienced undergraduate student or graduate student or a young professional. And over the course of 10 weeks, these mentees are allowed to converse and discuss a specific field of business with their mentor, learning more about the field, working experiences, as well as just getting more of a sense of how it feels to actually be a working member in the workforce. And then aside from that, we also have our resource program, which consists of our biweekly business newsletters that we deliver to our email subscribers. So a lot of business commentaries, business features, and interviews. We also have published a documentary film in the past, just featuring different businesswomen, their backgrounds, and basically how they got into business and what inspired them to do so. And then aside from that, we obviously have a large social media platform, which many of you guys are probably familiar with. So we have a lot of different educational posts in reel format, TikTok format, Instagram infographic content. So a lot of those just to bring, just to allow for educational tips to be more accessible to all. And then finally, we also have virtual events that we host every month. So our upcoming August one is in a week or so, where we feature different panelists working in these business fields and really showcase the different sectors of business. And then our third and final objective is our community objective. So we have a lot of different teams and events where we allow for girls of different ages and interests in business connect with each other through a shared platform. So obviously with our social media, our blog pages, and our ambassador team and chapter development team, where girls all over the world are able to really come together and discuss more about their pursuits and really empower and lift up each other in their pursuit of business in the future. And yeah, that was a basic introduction to Girls for Business. So if you're interested in checking us out, feel free to visit our website, girlsforbusiness.org, or Girls for Business on our socials on Instagram, LinkedIn, TikTok, Twitter, all of those. But yeah, I'll pass it back. So now we have the Building Your Business workshop, which is going to be most of today's event. So this is going to be around a 40-minute workshop in which we, the four of us, ideate how to start your own business venture. And then there are 5 core steps, which each one of us will go through. And if you have any questions at any time, feel free to put it in the chat or raise your hand, and we'll be glad to take them at any time. Okay, so starting with step 1, ideate. So everyone, if you have an idea of what it means to ideate, what it means to launch your business, can you guys put in the chat what you think the first thing that you need to do to launch an initiative would be in the chat? Or if you want to unmute or raise your hand, that'd be great too. Any guesses? There's no right or wrong answer. Yeah, I see a great answer. Come up with a plan or purpose for the idea you have. Figuring out a problem you're passionate about solving. Yes, of course. Yeah, I also see a lot of people with my name as their like bio. So I think that might be because you use the My Attendee link. So feel free to change your name back to your name if you want to. Yeah, I love these answers. So yeah, these are completely correct. It's really about identifying your niche, where you want to make a difference, make an impact in the community. So yeah, finding a problem that you're passionate about solving, definitely got to have that passion and that interest in furthering that objective. And then for sure, coming up with a plan is so essential to make sure that your approach to launching your business, which is subjectively the most important part of coming up with your business, it's super important. Okay, so yeah, so the ideation project process, we have three main steps to it. So finding your mission, like someone said, finding your objectives that support that mission, and also figuring out a structure. So like someone said, creating a plan to enforce and roll out those initiatives. Okay, so step one, identifying your mission. So yeah, first you gotta find your niche. So you have to think to yourself, what exactly can be improved in your community? What area am I interested in impacting? So you have to make sure that there is an existing need in the community that you think that you could make better. So in the past, there were a lot of organizations that would eventually start up, and within a few weeks or even months, they would ultimately fail because they were entering such a saturated niche in the business workforce that their solution was just really not unique to anyone else's. So you got to make sure that you're targeting an area that actually needs more competitors, and you have to make sure that you really solve for a specialized portion that actually you will make an impact in. So make sure that you pinpoint your target demographic as well. So think about who's going to be interested in your product or service, and who exactly do you want this to impact. So you have to think to yourself, what group of people do you think will find the most good out of my solution? And you want to make sure that your audience isn't too broad or too niche, because if it's too broad, then that means you'll have less time and energy and resources concentrating your resources, your marketing resources to that specific group. So you have to make sure that your target audience is small enough to sustain through your marketing and promotional aspect. So your marketing resources can specifically speak to a certain group, but at the same time, you don't want to make it too niche, like such a small group of people that it's going to be really hard to have like an audience for your actual product. So you have to have like a right balance. So with Girls for Business, our core target demographic was middle and high school girls. So with this, it was easier to make sure that our marketing and promotional content was specifically targeted to the humor styles, to the engagement styles of a middle or high school teenager. And then third and finally, I established your specialized objectives. So objectives are essentially sort of like the programs, the sub-programs that support your mission. So for example, our mission is to empower girls in their business pursuits. And then along with that, our objectives are mentorship, community, and resources. And make sure that your objectives are sustainable. So you don't want to set goals that are too hard to reach, like rallying up all of the teenage population to do a certain thing, like write a newsletter together. You have to make sure that your objectives are sustainable, that you can actually create them. So for example, one of our objectives was mentorship. So we created a mentorship program where people would be able to apply, and where we would actually be able to get people involved, such as our mentors, our undergrads, and graduate students. And then sustainable essentially means that these programs, these objectives can continue over time. So you don't want to make it like too initiative based, in which you can solve it within like a few months or so. So one of your objectives wouldn't be raising $200 for a certain fundraising foundation, because that could be fulfilled in a few months and not be a sustainable goal that you want to have. Okay, and then finally, you want to outline your programs. So this is part of the plan. When you're structuring the programs, make sure to identify first the operations. So this is mainly the action items of your initiatives. So you want to make sure that you're having a call to action And you also want to make sure that these are aligning with your core objectives, your core mission. So you want to have that centralized approach with your organization, and also make sure that these operations are realistic and sustainable. So a non-realistic operation would be recruiting influencers of over 1 million followers to come and speak at daily events that you host, because it's not sustainable or realistic to get into contact at your very start of your organization. So with this, one of our realistic and sustainable operations was our newsletter program. So we set out a bi-weekly schedule, and then we recruited our team to publish articles, one article every 2 weeks for these newsletters to go out. So this is more of a realistic goal, since first, your team can sustain it, and second, it has that right timeline, which I'll talk about with approximate timeline. And then second, you want to make sure that you identify your stakeholders. So stakeholders are anyone who has a stake or has something to gain or lose from your operations. So this would be your customers and your employees. And you want to make sure that you have a clear objective for your customers to gain from your organization, and for your employees also what they gain. So for example, for a for-profit, that might be in terms of like pay. And then for a nonprofit, that might be SSL hours or community service or something along that line. And then finally, third, we have the approximate timeline. So making sure that you know if you're making sure that you have a plan for how to roll out these objectives, and establishing like a routine if these are your core objectives for your organization. So again, using the newsletter example, setting those bi-weekly timelines. So in the first week, our writers will research and they will write out the first draft of the article, and then our editor-in-chiefs will edit it after 2 days, and then there will be a brief revision process of a couple days, and then on the final day of the second week, the newsletter will be published and sent to all of our subscribers. So really having that tangible timeline that you can map out and keep organized. And then finally, the ROI, the return on investment. So what will you gain from your experience with this business? So for a for-profit business, what will you financially gain from this? Because as a for-profit, your main goal is to earn money. And then for a nonprofit, which is more community service centric, how will you make an impact in the community? How will you make a difference? And how will you improve the lives of people who are enrolled in your organization? And with that, we close out our step 1 ideation process. So if you guys have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. But at this time, I'll be passing it on to our next section.
All right, so step 2 is initiation. It's when you're actually going to establish the foundation for your team and kind of set a standard for how you're going to move forward and your organizational structure. So during this step, we're going to focus on building our teams, setting communication up with our teams as well as our audience, and trying to start to get some engagement and getting to know our audience a bit more. So next slide, please. Okay, so I'm going to briefly touch upon the importance of fundamental structure, because your team is basically the basis of your business, as they are going to be the people who keep you and your audience motivated and engaged. So choosing who you want in your original kind of director, team, or kind of leading board is really important. So some questions that we asked ourselves were, what type of members are you looking for and how many? So at this time, everyone can kind of just drop in the chat some top traits that you would be looking for if you were to establish a team for your company. And while you do that, I'm going to go on to kind of explain some examples of what this might look like. So for example, if I were kind of focusing on a fintech company, I might want to look for people who have specific experience within the sector, either finance or technology, or something that I'm focusing on, such as artificial intelligence, if that's where I want to branch out with my company, if that's the niche that I'm going for. And then maybe if we're doing a nonprofit such as Girls for Business, like what type of members are we looking for? We're looking for the exact people that we're kind of marketing towards that can also lead our initiative. So we're looking for girls interested in business that want to inspire more of the same like-minded individuals that are kind of going to benefit from our resources. So yeah, feel free to drop in the chat if you have any ideas of what traits you would be looking for and what type of business you want to do. So I see Rachel. I don't know which Rachel said this, but but yeah, great traits to look for. So once you set up like your standard for what type of people you want to see, it's really important to kind of create a criteria or a rubric. So how we initially did this was we created this set like literal rubric that kind of is like what English teachers use to like grade essays. And it had like a point system of exact things we were looking for. For example, one of them was like business skill. And since at the beginning we were building our leading director team, we wanted to look for people with leadership skills since they would end up coordinating their own initiatives within each team. And then we graded on more specific parts of business and of leadership. So after this, you can also think about how many people you want, because depending on what type of business or what type of audience you're catering to, your business team size is going to be different. For example, if you're a really tech-focused company, as are a lot of emerging companies today, you're going to have a smaller team because you really only need some people in the developing team and to like maintain whatever you're doing, because you don't have physical products and you don't have a lot of services that you kind of need to physically maintain and have the workforce for. Whereas if you're kind of a service company, for example, like the fast food chain, you need people of every sort because you need everyone from management all the way down to just people working in each franchise. So after you've established who you want, we're going to think about what. So what type of people, like what is each person going to be in charge of and what does your team need? So for us, we were thinking of what directors we wanted to look for. So there were the main sectors that we focused on, which were PR, outreach, graphic design and art, writing, and finance. And then we started to look for people in each of those. And then as time went on, we saw opportunities to branch out even more. For example, right now, video and film creation is really trending and something that we want to work more with the rise of TikTok and Reels and Instagram also focusing more on the video algorithm. It's a really good time to kind of branch out. So you can always think to be open-minded and change up your organizational structure, but also setting that important kind of standard for yourself in the beginning is very important. So on that note, the key importance when you're actually looking and tying in together the people that you want for each of these roles and then who you actually want for each of these is to kind of look for who matches your organizational mission and who's going to contribute to the most to that. So sometimes you might run into someone who's super cool, extremely qualified, but once you hold an interview, you realize that your thought process isn't really on the same page. You're not looking at the same pace for the organization, kind of like what you see in the future doesn't align. And obviously you can communicate about these things, but in the end, it's really looking for people who are going to stick with you and your mission in the long run, because those are the people who will continue to grow your initiatives and continue to innovate along with the organization instead of against the organization. And then finally, you actually talk about rolling out these team structure applications if you decide to hold applications. So now you're focusing on when. So when are you hoping to publicize and what is your timeline? So this is super important because when you first look for people, you need to make sure that you kind of have a good solid pool of applicants to actually look into. So what we did at first was we first kind of made our Instagram and started to promote it on our own. And at the time, we had a very small team. It was just us 3 co-founders, and we basically just tried to promote it to the best of our ability. But in the end, we didn't get that big of a following from the beginning. But the importance was to target that niche audience that would have the applicant pool that we were looking for. So then we ended up getting a decent amount of applications in, even with that small following. So we actually had around like 150 followers at that time, and we got over 90 director applications. So that's why kind of targeting that audience is so important, because there's if you find people who are going to be interested, then a larger percentage of those people will actually apply. So on that note, we can move on to platforms to utilize and tips with boosting engagement, as well as communication with your team. So first, I want to talk about communication with your team. Basically, setting up a strong communication with your team is so important because your team is going to be communicating within themselves and also with their separate sectors. So for example, with our Girls for Business team, we have separate teams within each of the like PR, outreach, etc., kind of fundamental teams, I guess. And each of these teams have to work together with one another. So if there's a communication fallout, it could cause kind of a detriment to the timeline. So we really want to set up that standard from the beginning. Again, I'm really emphasizing that you set up the standard for your organization from the beginning, because if you're super, casual about everything and just not trying to meet deadlines or let your team know that some things are just strict and mandatory, then that carries on for a long time. And that's why you need to kind of have your idea of your priorities for the organization set at the beginning and have everyone on the same page as you. So with that said, it really depends again on what business you're trying to create and what team you're working with. For example, if maybe you're working with more of a younger audience, you might use a social media platform like Instagram to communicate. Whereas if your team is more millennials, or like Gen X, then you might be focused on a platform more like Facebook and things like that. So that just kind of personalizes communication for your team. And then as for platforms to boost engagement with your audience, like Rachel said, you set your niche. Now you have to market towards your audience and personalize your marketing content. The only reason to actually choose a niche is to be able to kind of cater towards them. So for us, we realized that Instagram really worked well with the people we were trying to reach, which are middle school and high school girls interested in business, as well as TikTok, because a lot of people are interested in, finding some educational resources on these platforms. So with that, we really wanted to engage with our audience. So we posted story polls and questionnaires and responded to comments, and you kind of get to know your audience a bit. And by getting to know them, you know what works and what doesn't work, and you continue to implement the things that do work and branch upon that. So again, this really depends on your niche, who you're aiming towards. So it's kind of your job to monitor this data and talk with your team about it to personalize it even further for your team. And this comes with time and continuous monitoring. So not only do you want to set your niche and market towards them, you want to actually, take a step back and see, is this working? What can we change to improve this? So yeah, and then one more tip for social media platforms especially is to keep consistent themes, because this is more of like a visual appeal. If your themes look really nice, like for example, we have this kind of rainbow theme going on. So if you scroll down really fast through our Instagram, it like creates a rainbow effect. Just having a nice theme that can also still be customizable is super nice and professional, and makes more people want to follow you just because of the organization of your platform. So now we can focus more towards step 3, marketing, and I'll pass it over to Emily.
Thanks, Ivy. So yeah, step 3, like Ivy and everyone else has said before, is marketing. And we've gone over this kind of very briefly when talking about steps 1 and 2. So I'll go a little bit more in depth about how Girls for Business does it, and like some general tips for every organization when it comes to marketing. We can move on to the next slide. Great. So marketing in reality is just like a really big game of figuring out how to make the people you want to notice you to actually notice you. And so like Ivy and Rachel have mentioned before, the people that you want to notice you is going to be your audience. And like they've also said, our general audience is going to be teen girls our age that might or may not be interested in business. And the thing with that is, like, just because our general audience is like middle and high school girls doesn't mean that they're going to be the only people that we market to. So it's really important to kind of note like the subsets within your general audience. So here's an example. Like Ivy said, Instagram is going to be the main place where we do a lot of marketing for Girls for Business specifically. And we know that the culture on Instagram is pretty informal, and it's very important to be personable and friendly on this platform. And if you go onto our Instagram, which Rachel plugged in the chat, go check us out. It's pretty evident in how we present our graphics and how we use our language. Now, in contrast, a platform like WeChat will probably reach a lot of Asian parents and not necessarily high school teen girls. So we're not going to be using Gen Z slang to try and market our content. That's pretty, I think this is something that people can figure out through common sense, but a lot of different platforms, through email, LinkedIn, Twitter, each of them have their own culture. And it's really important for you guys to sort of determine how you want to present your company or organization on that platform. So yeah, once Girls for Business sort of figured out what kind of culture we wanted to present on these platforms, we basically make sure to utilize and promote all of our like events, et cetera, on as many of these platforms as we can, because logically using more platforms means that you can reach a larger audience. So this kind of marketing that I was just talking about is a little bit more specific to like promoting your own projects. But another form of marketing that is pretty important is general social media expansion, because we always want a bigger audience to market like every initiative that we carry out. Really quickly, I see a question in the chat asking, has GFB tried out school outreach? And if so, how was that? And what were the outcomes? We have tried school outreach specifically. We used, we would contact different middle schools to reach out for, I think, ambassadors, and also for potential mentees for our mentorship program. I didn't specifically carry out that kind of outreach. So if Rachel wants to talk about that, you can also go a little bit more in depth into how successful that was.
Yeah, of course. Emily will also be talking more about this with the next step, and Sophia with scaling your programs. But essentially with school outreach, it's really good to, when you have a target audience such as ours, so teens and middle and high school, it's really good to reach out directly to school administration, contact them and let them know of the opportunity, especially if it's marketed right. So for us, like Emily mentioned, we marketed our business mentorship program that is made intentionally for middle and high school girls. So we really marketed it as an educational opportunity and an opportunity for students to kind of be exposed to a whole set of curricula that's normally not like discussed in school, as business is traditionally underrepresented in educational curriculum. So we really marketed in two ways. So our target demographic, so it's for students, and second, making sure that they know that this is a unique opportunity since business education isn't connected to the curriculum as much. And then I'll pass it back to you, Emily.
Yeah, I can actually elaborate a little bit more on that. I've done like school outreach or outreach to schools for some other organizations I've worked for. And I think something that's really important to note is that a lot of schools will see you as a liability if you aren't really established or you don't seem to be credible. So it's really important to present yourself as someone who's established or as someone who's credible. And another tip I might have for you if you want to try school outreach is to do cold calling. So like directly calling the administration. We found that there was a lot more chance that a school will reply back to you if you're like directly going and calling them. And that goes for a lot of different things actually, but yeah. I'll go back and talk a little bit more about, general social media expansion, where as opposed to using our existing social media following to tell people about our projects, this is about reaching completely new audiences. And something I thought that was really important for the way GFB markets is how we distinguish between forced forms of outreach. So these will be things like requesting to follow people on Instagram or asking other nonprofits to share our profile, as opposed to organic growth. And so this means, like, for example, trying to get on the For You page on TikTok or trying to get on the Explore page on Instagram, or having people spread by mouth the different events that Girls for Business might be holding. This basically means trying to persuade people to interact with your platform because they're interested in what Girls for Business does and not because like we showed up or like we tried to follow them on social media. And so some things that we do to promote organic growth includes things like Rachel's mentioned, a lot of our projects, including business education offerings through newsletters, daily social media posts. We even run documentaries and a lot of other things, and monthly events, things like that. And so because we are putting out all of this content, like the people who end up following us are actually a lot more likely to interact with all of our projects and actually utilize our platform the way we want them to. Now I'm going to go over very quickly how we organize our marketing, and it might be helpful for other growing businesses to see how we divide up our work. So when we're starting out, marketing can definitely be like a one-person job, but even then it's still very important to kind of divide how you're marketing to every single avenue, right? So the way Girls for Business sort of takes this approach in organizing marketing is in two ways. So the first one is by assigning a lot of different avenues to different teams. So for example, our graphic and design team leads a lot of the charge on Instagram posting and that type of stuff. And our outreach team will do a lot of things like event creation. The writing team leads like newsletter creation, and like the public relations team might coordinate like the LinkedIn and Instagram platforms, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, this might be self-explanatory, but dividing the work means like everything can be much more high quality. And it's also like very, very important for us to be able to communicate and coordinate this marketing together. So we're able to divide our work up while also, being able to turn out something that's a lot more higher quality. And we're also able to talk together to sort of run an efficient campaign to market all of our amazing projects. And finally, this is just like a little fun tip. Our teams like to use editorial calendars. So the month before an event, or the month before, we'll have a calendar set out and we'll plan out like the things that we're going to post beforehand, so everyone can sort of see what's happening and coordinate all the calendars together. And it helps people be accountable and actually carry out, the campaign. So we can move on to the next slide. Here, I kind of just put in an example marketing campaign that you might see, or you might want to refer back to if you want to start making your own marketing campaigns. Basically, the way we do it is we'll have a goal, and then we'll determine the ways that we're going to promote this goal. And we'll also include dates, details, and the specific content for each one. And like I said before, we'll divide up the work for different teams, and we'll make sure to communicate so that every part of the campaign is carried out. Great, I see Melinda has another question. For the ambassador program, you said, what was the planning process for the ambassador program like, and what were the steps to planning the program, and how did you ensure its success? Rachel, do you want to take over this question since you led the charge on that?
Yeah, I'll actually pass it on to Ivy, because Ivy was our main spearheader of the entire initiation process.
Wait, Emily, can you repeat the question?
Yeah, sure. So Melinda asks what the planning process for the ambassador program was like, and what were the steps to planning the program and how you ensured its success.
Okay, that's a great question. So yeah, when we were first looking into the ambassador program, the idea actually kind of stemmed from us personally receiving LinkedIn messages, kind of from like organizations that were trying to market towards us as in like Rachel, Sophia, and I. And then we were like, hey, wouldn't this be a nice program for people who want to kind of get into outreach, get into Girls for Business, get into the business field and get some experience while also kind of promoting our own initiatives and make our resources more available to people. So we decided to implement that through our ambassador program. And how we kind of ensured the success was we learned from the messages that we were receiving. For example, one organization sent me like multiple LinkedIn messages for the same event. And, you know, at some point when you get that message like 4 times, it gets a little bit repetitive and it just doesn't really bring a positive connotation to the organization because it seems a little bit unprofessional. So we learned from that and made like strict guidelines, set the structure for ambassador program to continuously check who they were reaching out to, check like, so we have a tracking document into Control F and make sure no one else has reached out to the same person because that really maintains their professionality and also just doesn't really bother the same person twice if they didn't want to attend. And that's just one example of kind of how we learn from our own experiences with that. And then another thing is to really keep engagement up with our ambassador team. So that's kind of something that we're actually currently doing. We're restructuring our team into 3 separate sectors of actual promotion. And this really creates like smaller bonds within each team. And then we have a lot of team bonding sessions because I think like having that strong communication again with your team is just so crucial for its success. So when you kind of are close with your team, but still maintain that professional relationship, that's where you can get the most effective work done and really have that team morale to promote ourselves. And most of all, just get them also excited about Girls for Business because at the end of the day, they are promoting us. So we want to get the people who are promoting us excited about promoting us because that's the excitement that they're going to transition over to the people they're promoting towards. And again, like with the success, it really just comes from monitoring your growth and continuing to be open-minded to changing your techniques with outreach and with team structures. So just always ready to continue growing.
Yeah, Ivy gave a lot of great tips about keeping engagement up and making sure that the team feels connected. That is so essential to making sure that everyone's engaged and is passionate about the work they're doing. You'll see that also come up later in the workshop. But structurally speaking, when you're setting up the recruitment process and you're setting up the whole structure for how you want your team to function and the purpose of it, you also want to make sure that there is substantial planning going out to there. So with us, we, like Ivy mentioned, we determined that we would love to have an ambassador team for the function of marketing and bringing the GFB programs to be more accessible for more communities and focused in more local and regional areas. So with this, our core function for the team was marketing. So we centered a lot of specific roles and position descriptions based off of this. So different marketing campaigns, different marketing techniques. So we would have example like role descriptions be having the ambassadors work out and facilitate different marketing campaigns in the form of multimedia formats. So with like video creation, with Instagram creation, infographic creation. So we had a lot of opportunities for ambassadors to get involved in the organization, not necessarily in a specific set niche. So there would be a lot of learning involved based on their own preferences. And you want to make sure that all of the structure is super clear so people know what they're getting into when they're actually applying. So make sure that when you're setting it up, besides your application, you always want to have, and this goes for any other team application, you want to make sure that you create a separate team position description document with at least 4 or 5 role descriptions listed for each of the available roles, just to make sure that people know what they want to gain from applying for this role, and just to encourage that there will be a lot of like creativity and learning experiences and growth involved with becoming a part of the organization. Okay, passing it back to Emily.
Thank you. All right, so some of you guys have been messaging me some really great questions. We're going to hold off on these questions until the very end, and you guys can just keep typing out questions as they come to your head, and we will go back and answer every single one of them. So yeah, really quickly back to marketing tips. It's been on the board for a while, so I'm sure you guys have been able to read the 4 points, but I'll go over them really quickly. The first tip I have for you guys isn't really a tip. It's just to note that like every organization's approach to marketing is going to be different. As long as you guys are consistent with the way you're presenting yourself on this, on like social media, on wherever you're marketing towards, it'll be great. And like that's pretty much all that matters, which is just like giving yourself an image or a consistent brand. The second tip is to diversify your marketing avenues, and by this I mean like don't always reach to the same audience for every single one of your projects. It's important to look for or like actually expand, and a really good way to do this is to try and go on different like marketing avenues, whether like it be a new social media platform or like a new forum, et cetera, et cetera. It's just important to take chances and reach out. It's okay if it doesn't work out the first time. You just keep trying until you're able to expand your audience. And that kind of leads into the next tip, which is don't be afraid to try new methods. It's totally okay if like your marketing was like a dud for a certain event, because you have an infinite number of chances in the future to try again and find something that sticks. So I think that's the really cool thing about marketing. Like it's not life or death if like nobody comes to a certain event, or if like nobody like likes your post or something like that. And finally, this is covering what I covered in the previous slide, which is make sure that you try and go towards organic outreach. Like you might notice in a lot of social media posts, you have people in the comments going like, check out my page, or like follow me and I'll follow you back. Like that is never going to be an effective way to market anything that you do. So always, stay true to your niche and, market and have a brand image and do things that will get people to like you and not like force your way into their life. Cool. So step 4 is engagement. It's something that both Ivy and Rachel have touched on a little bit in the previous slides, but engagement is something that's, I think, often overlooked in a lot of especially student-led organizations. And if you don't pay attention to engagement, your organization is going to die off pretty quickly. And we'll talk about engagement in 2 parts, the external engagement and internal engagement. So we'll start off with external engagement. Great. So external engagement is about reaching your audience over and over again, right? Like, yay, you successfully marketed one project or you've held like one event. And if you stop there, people are going to lose interest in you, since everyone nowadays has an attention span of like 10 seconds long. So you need to make sure to, keep their attention, keep them coming back to whatever you're doing, so that you have, excuse the construction going on above, but you want to keep people coming back to you. So that's why having, engagement on your platforms are super, super crucial, through like, the organic methods that I was talking about not 5 minutes ago. So for Girls for Business, this means continually churning out content, whether it be Instagram posts and reels, TikToks, interactive stories, monthly events, mentorship programs. Notice how I said like a lot of different things. You as an organization don't need to be churning out a lot of different things, as long as you're really, really consistent with like how you're churning out all of this content or whatever you're trying to market. So yeah, what I'm basically saying is we're able to consistently provide opportunities for people to continue interacting with us. And there's never a point in time where like nothing is being posted or nothing is being, shown in Girls for Business, because we want to keep people's attention engaged. We can move on to the next slide. All right, so if you're paying attention closely, Ivy touched on this just a little bit when she was talking earlier. And the question is, what do you think internal engagement is, and why do you think it's so important? Feel free to like answer in the chat, unmute, raise your hand, whatever's fine. Melinda gave a really good answer. She said team bonding because it strengthens the connections between team members and gives members more of an incentive to work and contribute. I think that was put really well. Does anybody else want to give an answer or elaborate on what Melinda said? I honestly think Melinda's answer was really good. Internal engagement, like she said, is mostly about having clear communication and having a sense of bonding within the team. And the reason why it's so important is because a team functions best when, the members care about the mission and the members care about each other, because you can get a lot more done when everyone is eager to make your organization the best it can be because they genuinely believe in it. So like I said before, internal engagement is honestly often very overlooked in a lot of student-led organizations, because a lot of people seem to be just going through the motions of, holding or having an organization to write a line on their resume, which is why I think at Girls for Business, it's really important that we ensure we're not here just for a line on our resume. We're actually here to make change happen and make an impact in the world. And so that's why at Girls for Business, we personally try to emphasize a culture that, like Ivy said, there's a sense of professionality within the places that we work, but we want to make sure that we know each other, and we want to make sure that we feel like everyone around us is like a family or a friend, and that Girls for Business is a place that you actually want to work at. And the way we try to do this is, for example, taking time out of our meetings to like get to know each other, whether it be through like icebreakers or little games. We also try to create opportunities for two-way interactions in our communications, just so we can have a little bit more interaction, i.e. we have like little icebreakers at the end of meeting recap emails. And I think that's a really fun way for us to get to know each other a little bit better. And just yesterday, in fact, we had another team bonding meeting where we literally just played games and got to know each other. And we didn't do anything that was like Girls for Business related. We just had a lot of fun and got to know each other a lot better. And I think that's something that if you're going to be holding your organization, it's something that you should keep in mind. Yeah. If anyone has anything to add on, they can do that, but I'm going to give the mic to Sophia so she can talk about our fifth step, which is scaling.
Yeah, so scaling is basically setting up an organization or business and also organizing how it's going to function and expand in the future. So if we go to the next slide. Now we have team growth. So team growth is not just about creating a larger team, it's also about learning how to communicate and work together. So with our leadership team, after we found our directors, we held an introduction meeting, and this was great for us and also great for many organizations or businesses to try. It's an opportunity for you as a leader to go into detail on what you expect from the new directors and also what you look forward to seeing in their new projects. This also allows the directors to ask more detailed questions and meet other directors, like Emily said, interacting with like other directors and bonding with them is extremely important because a lot of teams intertwine. For example, with our outreach team, they're in charge of creating events and they have to work with graphic design and arts or GDA to create social media promotions for their events. So it's really crucial to have good communication before a new project starts starts rolling in. And afterwards, we now host bi-weekly meetings, and this allows us to update our directors and also receive updates from each team. With team member expansion, we in the beginning, we released our team member applications, and we had 6 teams where we can where they can join. So we have outreach, public relations, writing, mentorship, graphic design and arts, and finance. And for us, these are the 6 teams that worked really well for our organization. But it really depends on your organization and your goals and how you want to target your audience. So for us, we have our mentorship program, which is the reason why we have a mentorship team. And we also have bi-weekly newsletters. So that's the reason why we have a writing team. But this isn't all set in stone for every organization. And this is in like a outline that you have to follow. After we started to get really comfortable with this, Emily touched a bit about it. And one of the problems that we had in the beginning was interacting and feeling comfortable to talk during meetings. So before I get into how we solve this issue, can anyone think of how they would approach this or any ways that you would do to engage with the team? You guys can write this in the chat or even unmute. Yeah, Melinda, you're spot on with how we solved it. We did games and icebreakers. Does anyone have any suggestions or ideas? If not, that's totally fine. For us, it was very new to us too, but Melinda got it right. We also did games and icebreakers. So we started with icebreaker questions in the beginning of each meeting. And we also started to play virtual games where we were put into teams. And this helps a lot with creating a comfortable environment for everyone. And we also encourage our directors to do the same during their own team meetings. Like Emily said, again, we did host a bonding meeting yesterday. And so we do these bonding events occasionally where everyone just meets other girls from the team and learn more about each other. And it's completely not related to our organization or to Girls for Business. But after we got comfortable with our 6 teams and how our projects were rolling through, we decided to expand our organization. And this is when we decided to create the ambassador program and open up chapter leadership team. So for the ambassadors, Ivy went into a lot of detail with this, but they concentrate mainly on marketing the GFB initiatives, and they do a lot of outreach, and they reach out to a lot of schools where we were able to be featured on a lot of school resources. And for our chapter teams, we expanded them so they were able to create clubs in their own school, and they helped with expanding locally in their own community. Next, if we go on to the next slide, we can go more into detail about program growth. So with program growth, we start off with social media and posting on our own accounts. So this helped us expand locally from where we are. For us, Rachel and I are from Maryland and Ivy's from Michigan. So we were able to expand mainly only in Maryland and Michigan. And then afterwards, we started creating a lot of interactive posts, which caught our target audience attention and opened up our team applications pretty early on, which helped because it allows girls who are interested in business to be a part of our initiatives and learn more about their passions. Now going more into detail about our initiative growth, in the beginning, we only promoted 3 projects, which were our mentorship program, our monthly virtual events, and our bi-weekly newsletters. So this is kind of a lot for an organization to start with. Usually most actually start with just one event, but just focus on the main projects that you want to release first, because that's how you are going to first present your organization. And then later you can be more creative with how you promote and be more creative with the other resources or other things that you want to promote from your organization or business. So yeah, we started promoting not only on Instagram, which is how we started, we also promoted on LinkedIn, and we started our own TikTok. And we also partnered with different organizations with the same goals as ours. And basically they would help us promote our initiatives and we would promote their initiatives. Afterwards, when we got comfortable with social media and how that aspect worked, like we knew how to consistently post and when is the best time to post, we then extended more promotions from email outreach and cold messaging. And this is where the ambassador program comes in, because they mainly focused on the email outreach when it comes to middle schools and high schools. And they also started to cold message companies to partner with or sponsor us so we can be able to expand and create new things. For example, they did a lot of sponsorship for our conference that we actually had in the beginning of the summer, and this allowed us to create a lot of cool interactive games and a lot of cool prizes, and that really helped with just creating a good community. And we also had like word of mouth, which is where our leadership team, our chapter team came in, because they were able to talk about it in their school and just let their school know, and those students, that there are new opportunities and there's a new club that they can join, which gain exposure to our initiative as a whole. And moving on to the next slide. So this is how we started. In the beginning, we only had 3 members and we had 3 initiatives and only 100 followers. And if you move to the next one, after a year, we now have over 150 team members and over 25 initiatives and 4,000 followers. So following these steps really did help, and learning from your mistakes really helped as well to expand within a year. And now moving on to Rachel.
Okay, amazing. So we are running a little bit behind schedule, so we'll save all of our workshop questions and general questions for our end Q&A, and then now we'll be entering a 7-minute inspiration session. So I'll pass the mic back to Ivy.
Yep, so really quick to just start off our inspiration session. I have a question for everyone. So what is the most important trait in an entrepreneur, as well as kind of the business's foundation team? So everyone can either unmute or drop their answer in the chat. And for this one, there's also no correct answer, but we're going to talk about something that we think is the most important trait. Okay, I will wait a couple more seconds. Okay, yeah, Laura, so we agree with you. We think that passion is the most important trait in an entrepreneur. However, Melinda, I do agree. I think patience is incredibly important, especially when you're starting off. It's really important to be patient and persevere. But now I'm going to elaborate a little bit more about passion. So Emily briefly mentioned this earlier, but yeah, we don't want an organization to be somewhere where people can bulk up their college apps or do it just for the sake of having something else on their resume. It's really about doing something that you love, that benefits both yourself and the organization. Because if you're joining something just for the sake of joining it, that's not going to benefit you, because you're not going to truly enjoy it or gain the most out of the experience. And that's not going to benefit the organization or whatever you're joining, vice versa, because they won't be getting someone who's putting their full effort in. And that's why we really look for passion when we were building up our foundation team. And that's why we want each of the leading members in our teams to have this passion, because they're the people who are going to motivate the rest of our teams, as well as everyone we connect with and engage with at our events, with our initiatives, with our programs, etc. So we really need that passion kind of built from the root to inspire and share this connectivity with others as well. So that's why we think it's so important. And in the end, this kind of does tie together with patience, because with passion, you gain the patience to continue to persevere, even when you might be going through a rough obstacle. in the creation of your business. And if you didn't have that passion and it was just a big block in the road, you might just decide to give up then and there, which is why this is the most motivating factor that kind of keeps the team going and continues to innovate and grow. Now we're going to move on to some inspiring stories, the stories that shaped our business, because we think that every single business is shaped from a foundation of stories. We want to share some of ours.
Yeah, so I'll start. So I think with running your own business venture, whether it be for-profit or nonprofit, I think the wonderful part of it and all of entrepreneurship is the experience that you get from it. So you're going to get to meet so many new people, try so many new things with your marketing and your scaling and your really efforts to reach more people with your initiative. So some of this, something that most impacted me was our experience with interviewing the 80 or so interviewees who applied for our initial leadership team. So Ivy, Sophie, and I, we interviewed over 80 student applicants over the course of just 1 week. So we had around 20 or 30 applicants, around 10 to 20 applicants each day that we interviewed in 15 to 20-minute interviews. And honestly, it was just so incredible just hearing everyone's stories, hearing their passion behind why they enjoy business or they want to pursue it. And I think it's just so empowering to really kind of witness the universality and the impact that you're making on your target demographic. So that's one of the greatest rewards that comes with ideating and launching your own venture. And I think also along with that, someone that has really moved me in their passion and commitment for business is an upcoming freshman. So they initially joined our initiatives as an 8th grader in middle school. So they heard about Girls for Business, and she was actually one of our first middle school team members. So she joined GFB initially as a mentee in our mentorship program. And she was so interested after her 10-week cycle that she also approached us with a lot of questions about how she could get more involved with the community to meet more people and learn more about business. So she also joined our ambassador team, and now she's on our film and content creation team. So along the way, she's really been so engaged in pursuing her journey down business. And I think it's the fact that you can meet so many empowering people such as her. I think it's a huge plus that comes with running an organization. The people you meet are truly incredible, and I've made some of my closest friends from GFB. And then I'll pass it to Sophia for your story.
Yeah, so something we also wanted to talk about is just our own personal growth, and leading and creating an organization was very new to us. So over the past year of GFB, we have dealt with a lot of problems and issues, and sometimes we felt a bit overwhelmed or discouraged. But meeting others and them telling about how they got into business really inspired us and made us feel really motivated to work through our problems and create more creative ideas to expand our organization. And overall, I guess we kind of forget that we're not alone in this organization, and everyone here is just so supportive and encouraging that it just makes us feel really happy that we created a platform for girls to feel comfortable to talk about their interests and passions. And I just remember being really nervous about whether or not I'm making the right decision for the organization, and I'm sure Rachel and Ivy has as well. But in the end, we just realized we have so many people supporting us, and we have so many people who are just as passionate as us. So it was just really great and helped us build confidence and helped me build confidence in our leadership skills. And yeah, with that being said, I'll pass it on to Emily.
Okay, hold on. I think Rachel mentioned that we are running a little bit short on time. And I think the story that I was going to mention talked a lot about engagement, which we've already talked about quite a bit. So we'll just skip directly to questions. So we have around 10 minutes for questions. And I know that Athena asked me a question earlier in the session, and she said, how did you find team members such as directors, etc., for Girls for Business at the beginning? How did you reach out specifically, and like what was the process like? So we can have any one of you guys want to answer since you guys were there from the very beginning.
Sophia, do you want to take this one?
So the question was, how did you find team members for Girls for Business at the beginning? So like, how did you reach out, and what was the process like for you guys?
Okay, cool. I think I'm lagging, so I might just be pausing really awkwardly. But for us, how do we start? We basically just talked about like our interest in business, and we wanted to go more into detail with it or learn more about it. And we realized that the only resources for business is just like DECA or FBLA, so like competition based, but there weren't anything that we can really learn just about business or like the specific details and different aspects about business. So we created on our own, and as for expanding it, we really just promoted it on our social media, and we found that a lot of girls are interested in it, and we noticed that a lot of people are having a hard time finding resources, and that business was just a very male dominated area. So it really helped just knowing that there was like a lot of people interested in the same thing. Does Ivy or Rachel want to add on to that?
Yeah, I can add something really quick. I think Sophia really covered kind of our initial ideas for creating the business and kind of communicating that to our audience who had the same mindset. So that's also how we kind of looked for people to actually apply to be a director. So they would like see our content and see the issues we were describing. Like one of the first things that we made really clear, like in our Instagram post, was what our mission and our objectives and why. And this is super important because it draws the attention of people who are interested in the same things right away. And it just gets them interested if that's the thing that, you know, they have passion for. So for us also, since us three are all interested in business, we already had some previous connections with people we knew were also interested in business. So we reached out to all the resources we had and tried to promote, you know, this like post that kind of described us wanting to open applications to people, and then also like reaching out to the people we knew who were interested in business to also share with their platforms, and kind of through this word of mouth marketing, got everything out there. And I think especially with like high schoolers, once you like reach one or two people who are interested in this field, they can automatically reach someone else, and then that person will be like, hey, did you hear about this opportunity, to their friend, and this cycle kind of goes on. And I think that's really how we branch it out. And then that post just made it super easy because it was very concise and just showed exactly what we were looking for. So they could just link the post over to their friend, and their friend, if they were interested, would just go and apply. So making the process super simple and easy to share is very important when you want to try and promote the initial application process. Yeah, does anyone want to add anything?
I think you covered it perfectly.
Okay, any more questions?
If we don't have any questions right now, we actually want to turn the tables and ask you all, to all the attendees, a question. So what do you hope to gain out of your business endeavors? So what are you looking to do to take a step in the business field. So what initiatives are you thinking of launching? What courses are you thinking of taking in this upcoming year related to business, or what clubs you want to join? So anything related to your next steps in pursuing business, we want to hear them. Okay, if you're not comfortable with sharing, that's totally fine. But yeah, if you guys have any questions, we can wait another minute or so if you guys want to put them in the chat or unmute. And then we'll shortly be wrapping up. And thank you all so much for coming today. Okay, so we're going to close up today. Again, thank you all so much for coming to Building Your Business, the third ILF training. Thank you guys for coming. And feel free to contact us. So we can be reached at our team, our GFB team email, so team@girlsforbusiness.org. If you want to reach out to us with any questions about business, about Girls for Business, or joining if you're interested, you can also check out our website at girlsforbusiness.org and our other socials. And then if you also want to contact the ILF Foundation or Yuan Media, both sponsors of these events, you can also contact them with the emails written on screen. But yeah, with that, thank you all so much. We are wrapping up officially. We hope that you gained something new from today, whether it was about launching your own business or furthering your initiatives and community impact. And we're super excited to see you all at the future ILF trainings. I think there's one actually coming up in 3 days. So hopefully see you all then. All right, bye everyone.
Bye, everyone. Thank you so much for coming.